I had tons of adversity thrown at me, and I had huge goals and dreams as my trauma response to that. Basically, it was like adversity on steroids, because when you're being stomped on by life and you're trying to aim as high as humanly possible, you get double the whammy of adversity, because not only are you struggling, but you're also struggling up against the weight of your own goals. And so the more I was attacked, the more I was beaten down, the more I was abused at times, the more life threw adversity my way. Aim higher, work harder, get smarter was my trauma response. So socially, I became a coward and a chameleon, fit in, don't lose any more friends and family. But my trauma response behind the scenes was fight, aim higher, work harder, get smarter, prove myself. And eventually that hits a ceiling where you can't prove yourself forever. But how many more awards do I need before I prove my worth? And so what makes the difference, I think, looking back on my childhood and how many people didn't respond to adversity the way that I did, I think it comes down to self-belief. What I have is this deep knowing that I built this myself. You could take it all away and I'd rebuild it again bigger. It's called anti-fragile. Anti-fragile is the more you try to tear something down, the stronger it gets. And I think that that is a good metaphor for what some people develop when they come from really tough upbringings.
Welcome back to the Grateful Podcast, where we explore how we can pursue great, ambitious goals while still being rooted in gratitude for the moment. Today I had the pleasure of sitting down with Alan Lazaros, co-founder of the Next Level University, and a man who has an incredible story of rebuilding his life after a tragic car accident took his father's at age 2. And then his stepdad left at age 14, leaving him and his mom with no money. Alan shares how those moments of tragedy ended up shaping what today has become a triumph. How a car accident that he had when he was older reshaped his perspective on life and gratitude, and how all of that combined makes it his purpose to give back and give us, starting out, the purpose and the gratitude and the plan that he wished he had when he was starting out. Today we'll dive into the psychology behind why certain people from certain backgrounds behave as they do, why most people never develop real grit, and how you can transform adversity into your greatest advantage in life. I promise you that this one will challenge how you see your goals and your future, and you'll come out a better person. I hope you enjoy the episode. Alan Lazaros, welcome to the Grateful Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Gratitude first, always. And this is not actually just on your show because it's the Grateful Podcast. I always start with gratitude. I try to sandwich everything I can with gratitude because I mentioned this to you off air. I'm very overwhelmed right now. I did, I think, 54 last week podcasts, coaching sessions, and trainings. My average in Q3 was a lot. So I'm overwhelmed as hell. But I told you off air, that's a good thing in business. And if you're not grateful for being overwhelmed in business, like in business, you always want supply to be smaller than demand, AKA you're overwhelmed, but it's aligned overwhelm. And so I'm grateful to be here, man. I really appreciate it. And I need to keep that top of mind. Otherwise I will definitely burn out.
When did gratitude start for you?
Two answers to that question. The first one, so I'm going to start this out with, I think there's two main buckets of people. This is a wild oversimplification, but I think it's important for everyone to understand which one they're in. And I'm not making either one right or wrong. And this is not a bucket you choose, by the way. This is a bucket that chooses you. So the way that I grew up, my birth father died at 2, my stepfather left at 14. I grew up very rough. And so rough, in fact, that I never even used to talk about it. My mom and stepdad did not get along. That's a polite way to put it on a public medium. So when my stepdad left, he took 95% of the income with him. We went from sort of boats and ski trips.com bubble in the 90s to I get free lunch at school. I don't know how I'm going to go to college. I don't know how I'm going to afford it. My mom trades in her BMW for a little Honda Civic. I get free lunch at school. I think I mentioned that. Shopping at Salvation Army type of thing. So we don't have cable. Now, I was born and raised in Massachusetts, so we weren't going to starve. But from that moment to basically, probably my early 20s, it was like pretty tough. How am I going to go to college? How do we keep the house in the family? That kind of thing. So to answer your original question, bucket 1 is the adversity bucket. Bucket 1 is the bucket where you get all entitlement stripped from you. So my birth father died at 2, entitlement stripped away, right? I mean, you're not even entitled to having two parents. Stepfather leaves, takes his entire extended family with him. Haven't seen or spoken to a single one since. Okay, so you're not guaranteed family either. There's a whole bunch more to that, but I'll keep it brief. So bucket one is entitlement is stripped from you. So if I was ever going to be spoiled, that got ripped out from under me. That's a polite way to put it. So bucket one is basically you have what's called a high ACE score. Have you ever heard of adverse childhood experiences? It's an ACE score, ACE. Okay. So anyone who has a very, very, very high ACE score, you basically are not ever going to be what I refer to as a spoiled brat. You're never going to want big rewards for minimal effort. You're a try hard, you're a die hard, and you know that life is inherently suffering, and despite that, you can make it meaningful. So that's bucket one. Bucket two, I am not making wrong because I probably would have chose that if I could have. Bucket two is you grew up with things pretty good. Overall, things were pretty good. Obviously, everyone has some trauma, but, Christmas was good and holidays and family and, you have dinner at the dinner table with your family. You have two parents type of thing. And that was never going to be me. But that bucket is dangerous in adulthood, what I've found. So just so you know, I'm not just randomly talking. I've got 11,543 hours of coaching, training, and podcasting. And the reason I say that is all people all over the world, all different backgrounds, all different cultures, all different industries. So I'm not just talking. This is my study. That's my lab. If you're in bucket one, you're grateful by default because you don't believe life is supposed to be great. So when it is great, you're just grateful. Like, dude, I got money in my bank, food in my fridge. I got a nice shirt on. We're good. Life is so good right now. There's no drama, no trauma. No one's belligerently drunk. Like, life is so good. So when you grow up rough, I think you're naturally more grateful. The second bucket I think is more dangerous in adulthood, and this is what I've found, is you actually kind of believe unconsciously and subconsciously that life is supposed to be great. So when it's not, you think something's wrong. You think something's wrong with you, others, or the world. You blame the government or you blame someone else outside of yourself. So two ways to answer your question. Number one is gratitude started for me from a very young age because it was so rough that even a bright day was just so much gratitude. The second piece of that is when I was 26, I got in a car accident and my birth father died in a car suddenly at 28 when he was 28 when I was 2. So for me, this was the second chance my dad never got. And from that moment, I put gratitude on steroids. I mean, that was 11 years ago coming up in November. I mean, dude, not only is every day above ground a great day because of where I came from, but on top of that, now I make gratitude a conscious practice too. So it's just another level. And I work every single day. I haven't taken a day off in coming up on 11 years, and people think I'm out of my goddamn mind. But the truth is, I think gratitude is something you practice. I think you show it with your effort. If you don't put effort into your life and take life seriously, I think you're taking life for granted. That's my truth.
So one of the things that we dive into the most on this podcast is how you can take your most adverse moment, a moment that looks objectively terrible, and turn that into the fuel for the amazingness in your life. But something you said that I'm going to actually argue a little bit is that when you are brought up thinking that life is supposed to be inherently good or great, and you expect it to be that way, that oftentimes turns against you. Because I've been extremely, extremely lucky to have a family that's taught me I deserve to have a great life. And in deserving to have a great life, I will never settle for anything less than that. I know inherently that I am worthy of greatness, and I will never, ever accept anything less than that. I do think that those patterns play out a lot, but I think on the other side of things, most people that have bad things happen to them turn to a victim mindset. Most people that end up seeing life in a way where they're like, oh wow, that happened to me, that happened to me, that happened to me. I'm below this pile of shit. And they just turn to these excuses. Like, I was reading a study the other day about people and childhood trauma, and these memories that would come out of childhood, like in therapy, that weren't actually real, that gave people like this sense of, oh, I can be complacent because I've had trauma in my life.
Mhm.
And I think you're the anomaly, honestly. And I love that. You see people like you see people like the David Goggins story. And it's like, I'm going to turn this shit show into something so amazing so people don't have to go through this anymore. Well, what
Yeah.
do you think about that?
I think that's a good perspective. I think that both buckets have a response to each. And I do agree with you that I'm an anomaly. I never used to agree. I used to think my adversity was my advantage and all kinds of stuff. I now realize, and Kev playfully jokes, he's like, dude, the fact that you got here is ridiculous based on what he's learned from what I came up with. And he started from very humble beginnings too, and that's a polite way to put it as well. He's my business partner. And I always tell him, I say, Kev, if you were born spoiled on any level, there's no way we could work together. I think you're an anomaly, Jack, a little bit on if you have high grit and high work ethic, that's rare for someone who grew up well. And I'm an anomaly because non-victim mindset is rare for someone who grew up hard. And so how do you take the best of both worlds here? And this is why I said I don't make one bucket wrong or the other, because quite frankly, my beautiful girlfriend and future wife had the bucket too. She grew up very well. And not, her parents are entrepreneurs. So in the beginning, she saw the early days and how hard that was, right? Not candy corn, but eating corn out of a can, wearing your Uggs because the heat isn't on type of thing, all the way to now, like, let's just say money's not an issue. So it really depends how you react to it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can be very adverse and have a high ACE score. And I do agree with you. Statistically speaking, the majority of people who have a high ACE score use that as an excuse for why they can't be great. However, Jack, I've met a lot of people on your end who have high self-worth, but the self-worth is inflated. They believe they deserve a great life without effort. And that's a dangerous place to be. And so how do you, I use self-belief and self-worth. Think of 4 quadrants: victim, villain, hero, guide. Victim is the bottom left quadrant, low self-belief, low self-worth. Mm-hmm. People like me who have been stomped on literally and physically and figuratively, a lot of times end up with low self-belief and low self-worth. Self-belief, I'll define it, is your belief in your ability to achieve something externally. Self-worth is what you believe you deserve internally. Mm-hmm. The villain, I think, is inflated self-worth, meaning I deserve with minimal effort because I'm better than. But they have low self-belief deep down. They actually don't believe in their ability to create very much, particularly not through their own merits and their own effort. This is someone who has unearned, inflated self-worth. These are the bullies of the world. And then the heroes are the martyrs of the world. This is what I used to be: high self-belief but low self-worth. So you basically run around trying to save everybody and try to change the world at your own expense, at the expense of who you really are. And then eventually the people with high self-belief and high self-worth are guides. And a guide is someone who, I don't need to save you, Jack, but I can help you if you so choose. So victim, villain, hero, guide, every movie is basically a character going from victim to villain to hero to guide in some sort of syntax. And I use Harry Potter. He was a victim when his parents were killed. He became the hero of his own story when he went to Hogwarts and decided to leave the Dursleys. He had to face the villain within because he realized that he was actually had Voldemort inside of him, and had to choose Gryffindor over Slytherin, the whole thing. Am I bad? Am I bad? Am I bad? And then after Dumbledore died, he had to become the guide of his own story. And when he broke the Elder Wand and threw it away, he became enough as he is after he defeated Voldemort. And Ron is like, no, that's the Elder Wand. Because Ron is still a hero. He's not good enough as he is yet. And I think, unfortunately, and this is what I've found in the 21st century, and I don't want to pick on your generation or mine, but a lot of my generation and yours are trying to start out as the guide. And they don't realize that they have to go on the journey and they have to be gritty and like face adversity by choice, because there's two types of adversity. There's the adversity that life throws at you, and some people have a lot of that. And then the second type is adversity that comes as a byproduct of having massive goals and dreams. And I unconsciously chose both. I didn't know, but I had tons of adversity thrown at me, and I had huge goals and dreams as my trauma response to that. So basically it was like adversity on steroids, because when you're being stomped on by life and you're trying to aim as high as humanly possible, you get double the whammy of adversity, because not only are you struggling, but you're also struggling up against the weight of your own goals. And so someone like a David Goggins or a Tony Robbins, these people that grew up very rough, they end up these incredible people that can change the world. And I do think that they have something that is not normal, that needed to be developed in order to survive, that now they can use to thrive. And I do think that the majority of people in your bucket who grew up well thinking they are deserving don't actually end up developing that emotional and physical muscle necessary to actually become stronger. Not always, but again, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we are exceptions. The goal is to be exceptional. And if you want to be exceptional, you do have to be the exception through your action. But what's interesting there is that two people can have the same circumstances, at least objectively from the outside, and create two entirely different lives.
100%.
Like most people who would go from yacht and ski trip like you did at 14 to free school lunch, they would not develop the grit that you have. And most people that are told that they're worthy without really having to earn it, as I did, would just continue on a coasting lifestyle. So
yes,
if two people
exactly.
can have the same circumstances, at least objectively, what changes how their lives plan out?
Yeah, I think goals. So for you, for example, and I'll use someone else anonymously because I actually think you're an exception and so am I, so I don't want to use that. But there's someone I'm thinking of who is very lazy, but they don't know it because they've never really had to try for much. And they don't have big goals. And deep down, they don't really believe in themselves that much because they didn't really achieve much on their own. They came from a very wealthy family, and they kind of had a lot handed to them, for lack of better phrasing. They worked a little bit, but it was always kind of easy street, to be honest. And so because of that, they actually have shame deep down around the fact that they've never really created anything for themselves. And so I think it's self-belief and goals. I've been working on this a long time. The coast mode that you're referring to, that you obviously didn't choose, because you wouldn't be in London right now abroad if you chose coast mode, and you certainly wouldn't have tried to go into one of the best schools in New England, Northeastern. So like coast mode is like you go to a kind of middle tier college and you basically get good grades, but not because you're trying. It's more because it's kind of easy and you're pretty naturally gifted and things are pretty easy. And so this person that I'm thinking of, I actually think is a great person, believe it or not. I actually think he's awesome. But I can tell he doesn't have what I have. And what I have is this deep knowing that I built this myself and that you could take it all away and I'd rebuild it again bigger. It's called Anti-Fragile. Have you ever read the book Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb?
I haven't, no.
Okay, Anti-Fragile is a term that apparently there's no antithesis to fragile. So Nassim Taleb, I don't necessarily love the book or the person necessarily. I love the concept. He talks about how anti-fragile is the more you attack someone, the more you try to tear something down, the stronger it gets. And I think that is a good metaphor for what some people develop when they come from really tough upbringings. And I think that it's something that everyone can develop, but not everyone does. Can and do is two very different things. So I didn't do this consciously. I wish that I had, because then I could have taught it to some of my friends and stuff. But like, the more I was attacked, the more I was beaten down, the more I was abused at times, the more life threw adversity at my way and people threw adversity my way. I aim higher, work harder, get smarter was my trauma response. So it's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn for the trauma responses. So socially, I became a coward and a chameleon, fit in, don't lose any more friends and family. But my trauma response behind the scenes was fight, aim higher, work harder, get smarter. Aim higher, work harder, get smarter. Prove myself, prove myself, prove myself. And eventually that hits a ceiling where you can't prove yourself forever. Like how many more awards do I need before I prove my worth? Right? But you don't just get awards for nothing either. And so what makes the difference, I think, looking back on my childhood and how many people didn't respond to adversity the way that I did, I think it comes down to self-belief. And I tried to unpack an equation for how to build self-belief. So self-belief is unconscious and subconscious. It's not conscious. Most people think they believe in themselves, but deep down they don't. And if you want proof of that, research the studies. Only 3% of people have clear written goals. If you have really, everyone out there watching or listening, think about someone who acts super confident. They come off so competent and confident. Why would someone with level 10 confidence have level 2 goals? If you're so confident, sir, usually a man, not always, why are your goals so small? Deep down, they don't believe in themselves. So they stumbled upon greatness. A lot of people are naturally talented. They stumble upon being great at sports, being great at whatever. And it's usually the people who are bullied and losers who have to design it in advance and actually build belief. So the two guesses which one I was, right? But it's state, prove, self-assign. State, prove, self-assign. State, prove, self-assign. So Kev, he uses the metaphor of he was an all-star baseball player, but he didn't intend to be. He didn't say, hey, I want to go get good at baseball and then go do it. He thought he got lucky. He would admit that today. I thought I just got lucky. I thought I was naturally good at it and I just thought I got lucky. I was like, wait a minute. You were like a rock star baseball player by accident? He's like, yeah, kinda. Imagine if you tried. Oh my goodness, right? I've never done anything by accident, but I'm also an engineer. So for me, everything is reverse engineered. So it's state, prove, self-assign. State that you're going to go to the gym tomorrow. Prove to yourself that you go. And then self-assign it once you do. More importantly, 10 pounds in 10 weeks. I intend to lose 10 pounds in 10 weeks. Prove to yourself you can do it. And then self-assign it once you do. This is the formula. Set a level 1 goal. Hit it. Self-assign it. Then set a level 2 goal. Hit it. Self-assign it. Set a level 3 goal, hit it, self-assign it. So Next Level You, Next Level University, my company and the podcast is built on Next Level You, meaning you want to build self-belief inside. You have to decide in advance, premeditated what you're going to do, prove to yourself you can do it with an external outcome, and then self-assign it once you do. So I was doing this unconsciously without knowing it. Kevin wasn't. So when Kev got into his suicidal ideation at 26, my car accident at 26, we were kind of met in a hopeless place. And he had no self-belief built. And I had so much self-belief built that I came off arrogant to everybody. I still do. What if I'm not arrogant? I think it's arrogant to wing it and think you're going to win. I think it's arrogant to not work consistently. Why would someone who's arrogant work every single day? I think it's arrogant to have huge goals and then not track anything, not work hard, not try. People who come off arrogant to other people might actually have a ton of self-belief, and they come off to people who don't as arrogant. And some people actually are delusional and arrogant, so it's hard to sift through all this. But what I found over time, I met my girlfriend, Emilia, 5, almost 6 years ago, and future wife, and she said, "You're the most humble man I've ever met." And I said to her at the time, I kid you not, because I've never been called humble in my life. 2 guesses why, right? She meant it. She was sincere. And I said, I appreciate that, sweetheart. I really do. But I don't identify at all with being humble. And she said, Alan, that's exactly what a humble man would say. And I was like, oh, am I humble? Holy crap. And it got my brain thinking, like, why would I work every day for 11 years straight if I was arrogant? Why would I read every book I can get my hand on? Why would I have dozens of mentors and coaches, including David Meltzer, who we've both met, if I was arrogant? I was like, oh, I come off arrogant, but I'm actually humble inside? Interesting. And so then that reframed my whole life. And now I look for people who have high humility, high coachability, and high work ethic, because with those three things, I can bring the strategy, and watch out, world. It's totally doable. But to answer your original question, self-belief needs to be built homegrown, organic from the inside out. And it has to be built through achievements over time that compound, that you self-assign.
So one of the places where people get the most stuck with this is they'll say, well, Alan, I could do that if I tried. I could do that if I knew where to focus my energy. But so many people that do have this grit, this motivation, they haven't unlocked yet, or maybe they have unlocked it, but they haven't put it in a place that is fulfilling to them, that brings them the ROI that they're looking for. They have no clue where to start. Maybe someone, and this has been something I'm still working on, is spread out, where they're putting their effort into 7 different things that they want to work because they're so ambitious. They're like, life is short, I want to win now. And they do that by putting one egg in every basket. But really, the most effective way is to fill up one basket at a time, right? So where do you start? If you have to start with one basket, how do you figure that out?
So I did it from the outside in, unconsciously. I did professional development first, personal development second. If I could go back in time, I'd flip the script. So I did the traditional path, similar to you. I did preschool, kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, high school, college, and corporate. Got in a car accident at 26 in corporate. I had achieved all of what I thought was success. Global 1% earner, 150 grand in a Vanguard account, paid off all my college debt, boom, 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 all this stuff. Rising in corporate very quickly. I think I worked for like 7 different tech companies in my early corporate career. Then I flipped the script because I realized that I was very professionally developed, but not as personally developed. I found personal development at 26. It was sort of personal development, personal growth, self-improvement. At 26, I found Tony Robbins' TED Talk after a car accident I had. So I went from the outside in, and if I could go back, I'd probably go from the inside out. And again, some of this is on me, and some of this is the fact that we didn't learn a goddamn thing about personal development in school, right? I've done trainings, master classes, relationship talks events, all these events for months, book club, all these people. I've asked this question so many times. Who here has ever taken a formal class in school or college on goal setting, how to set and crush goals? Everyone always says, nope. Okay, what about vulnerability, humility, and courage? Nope. Okay, what about character traits and vices versus virtues? Nope. Okay, what about self-belief and self-worth? Nope. We didn't learn anything about ourselves in school. Apparently that's supposed to be done at home. Certainly didn't happen in my home, right? There was no self-improvement, self-awareness, personal development, or personal growth in my childhood at all. That's one of the reasons I'm trying to bring it to the masses. Next Level University, what you'll never learn in school but desperately need to know. That is still my driving force. Because not knowing means you can change that. A lot of people know and do nothing with it. That's apathy. That's your problem. But if you don't know, you can't do better. You have to know better to do better. So I went outside in instead of inside out. If I could go back, I would be personally developed first, professionally developed second. And I think school tends to be really good at professional development. I call it STEMBIF, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, business, and finance. That actually did me very well. I did very well in those. And I think that I understand the economy. And I think I understand business to business, business to consumer, business to government, how it all fits. 195 countries, 8 billion people on planet Earth, 5.65 billion people on the internet. That's increasing drastically with Starlink. So I get it. I get the technology and the outside world pretty well, but I didn't understand myself at the deepest levels. Internal family systems, cognitive behavioral therapy, all these inner modalities, I didn't understand. And so now I'm someone who not only has a therapist, but also helps people with those.
I'm quickly interrupting just to let you know how grateful I really am that you're here tuning into the Grateful Podcast, that you're a member of this community. It's amazing just how much we've grown in the past year. I'm a freshman in college. I started this 10, 11 months ago, and we have 11,000 downloads. We have over 100 episodes, and I just want to keep that momentum going. So if you could help out with that by sharing this with someone that you think would really get value from it, leaving a review down below, or subscribing wherever you listen or watch, that would just mean the world to me. All right, let's get back to the episode.
And so how does someone start if they're putting their eggs in too many baskets? You basically have to figure out where you are lacking. A lot of people think like go all in on your strengths, all this kind of stuff. I'm with you. You got to know yourself. You got to know your strengths. You're not don't design your future on a weakness. That's a dumb idea. However, you're not successful because you don't believe enough in what you already believe. You are not successful because you think inaccurately. And me too. This is on all of us. I use the self-driving car as a metaphor. I have a self-driving Tesla, FSD, full self-driving. Technically, you're supposed to supervise it. You don't really have to. It's unbelievable. Okay, you ever been in a self-driving car? You're in London, of course you have, right? Okay, awesome. So the Tesla has a screen that shows me what it sees. There's 9 cameras, 3 in the front, 1 in each passenger side door, 1 in each rear door, 1 in the back, 1 in the car. So of those 9 cameras, if one of the cameras is occluded, it doesn't let you use the feature. Of course, right? If it has a blind spot, it's going to drive off a cliff on accident. So I watch to see, because I'm supervising, in quotes, I watch to see what it sees. So if we're at an intersection and there's cyclists going by, I see if it sees that it's bikes. I see if it sees the bird. I see if it sees the squirrel. I see if it sees the car or truck. I need to know how accurate this thing is. Here's why. If the Tesla has inaccurate data about itself, others, or the world, it will drive me off a cliff potentially. Now, that's a metaphor. Obviously, it's not going to drive me off a cliff. But that's what people do in life. They drive off a cliff repeatedly, thinking it's a road, and then they blame the world or blame themselves or blame the government, when in reality, all of it comes down to you have inaccurate data. I know some people who are really good looking who think they're not. I know some people who are really not who think they are. Why is that relevant? Because the decisions that you make need to be predicated on accurate data. You need to understand. I'll give you an example. If I think I suck at mathematics, I don't think that, but let's say I did, and I'm at the very high end of that bell curve, and I assume everyone else knows finance, I'm going to spend my life asking people finance questions of people who don't know anything, and then they're going to pretend they do because their egos want to feel special. And I'm going to get inaccurate data. They're going to distort my reality, and then I'm going to make poor choices. So where does someone start? Someone starts with understanding what you don't understand. Where are you inaccurate? Are you inaccurate about yourself, others, or the world? Those are the 3 categories. My job, my goal, my mission, my focus, 24/7, 365, is figuring out where am I inaccurate with myself, others, and the world. And that's what I do for all my clients. That's what I do for all of my 19-person team. That is constantly what I'm looking for. You and I, in this conversation, already updated our awareness. You had an interesting notion of challenging me on my original point, and you and I both got a deeper level of understanding of, oh, we're both anomalies in those 2 buckets, and I didn't realize that I was an anomaly in my bucket. That updated my awareness. Now I'm going to go forward into the world and not drive off a cliff and then blame the world. The truth is, when you're an anomaly, your understanding of the statistical bell curve of human beings is off. I have a client who is on the very high end of the bell curve in terms of how attractive she is in a male's eyes. She thought she was a 2, so she was acting like a 2. She didn't know her value. That happens with all of us. So, for example, in that metaphor earlier, I do not give myself enough credit for what I was able to build from where I came from, so I assume most people would have done that. So therefore, I don't understand how rare it is to actually have a high ACE score and a successful life. When in reality, statistically speaking, what is it? Probably 90% of those people are living paycheck to paycheck and not turning their adversity into their advantage. And that's just one example of the countless, and this is the problem. I used to say this all the time, last piece. Where does someone start? You learn the chess pieces, you learn the chessboard, you learn what each piece does, you learn everything about chess, And then you go fail at chess and you learn from mentors who play chess better than you. The problem is in life, there's not 36 pieces in a chessboard. There's infinite possibilities. How do you know what career to choose? How do you know what your strengths and weaknesses are? How do you know your meta skills, sub skills, and skills? The game of life is infinitely more complex than the game of chess. And the game of chess can take a lifetime to master. So we're all in some serious trouble if we don't get to work. And so my whole life has been trying to master this game. It's an infinite game, and it's finite games within an infinite game, and that's game theory. We can get into that if you want to. But ultimately, where does someone start? They start with self-awareness. They start with self-assessment. They start with where are you ignorant? Like, that's the place to start. Where are you ignorant? What is your level of self-belief really? Not what you want your friends to think, not what your reputation is on Instagram, not social media land, but like, how much do you actually believe in yourself? Do you have clear written goals? Do you have timelines and targets? Do you have metrics and habits? Are you actually in alignment with your highest self? Do you have bad habits? Do you have vices that you constantly escape into? These are all very overwhelming, scary questions. That's why we all avoid them. But they're the most important ones to ask.
When did you start to question yourself and your life?
Very young. That's one thing I will share. I screwed up by not knowing personal development, but I've been an existentialist since I was a kid. You know what an existentialist is?
Yeah.
Someone who's always questioning.
Explain for the audience.
Yeah. So an existentialist is someone who questions their existence. They take full responsibility for their life unconsciously. It's not like I was a kid and I was like, I'm going to take full responsibility for my life. I just happened to take on more responsibility than I probably even should have. Like, I took on the junk of my family without even knowing it was. Like, I was like, how do we keep the house in the family? How do I build a bigger, better, brighter future for my family? All this kind of stuff. This was all unconscious, right? Man of the house at 14 type of thing. But existential questions, like, because I asked, Kevin and I argued on the podcast recently. He's like, well, you had more self-belief than other people, so it doesn't work that way for everybody. He's like, you're an anomaly, you're a whatever. I said, yeah, but the principle's the same. I know, I get it, right? Of course, I was gifted, I get it, thank you. But that doesn't mean that not everyone can get better. Sorry, moving the mic here. And so I actually reviewed the episode, and I actually notebooked this out. I figured out that self-belief is actually secondary to deeper understanding. And what comes and precedes deeper understanding is asking and answering questions, which is thinking. I think thinking is the most important thing. I know that people who are, Emilia, she does emotional work, and I coach a therapist. It's like, well, emotions are important. I know. But hear me out. My dog is barking. You can probably hear that. Tucker, my dog, cannot think that deeply. He can't contemplate the universe. He can't plan the month, the quarter, the year. He can't plan his career. He doesn't have the executive function. Dolphins, primates, and humans have this. You're studying neuroscience, so you obviously get this. I think that what is uniquely human, Homo sapien, is the ability to think. And my ability to think has saved my life. That is what got me out. So deeper understanding comes from asking the right questions and finding answers. It's the scientific method. And so I've been running the scientific method since I was a little kid without knowing it, I think out of pain. Because I would say, like, why does my mom smoke cigarettes? Like, she's going to die. I think she's going to die. I don't want her to die. I love my mom. So I printed out a 12-page report when I was like 10 to present to her why she needs to quit smoking. And still to this day, she's like, I quit smoking because of you. So I've always been questioning myself, others, and the world. Even in this podcast episode, I am questioning you and me to try to learn.
And the most important part of the scientific method is testing the hypothesis. And I think to come back to the original point, to come full circle, the biggest advantage that you had because of your adverse circumstances is you weren't afraid to fail, right? What you said earlier about with the chess metaphor, you just have to learn and you just have to go and fail at chess. That's where so many people get stuck. We're talking about thinking, and a lot of people don't test the hypothesis. They stop at making the hypothesis and gathering the information. People think that their purpose is just going to come to them if they sit in a room or if they write. And that's not how it works. Movement is where you get a purpose. You fail first and you understand through movement. And I've been so blessed to just be motivated to move. I've had curiosity my entire life, and I haven't just been contemplating it always. I mean that's wrong. I am always contemplating it, but I'm doing that through movement. I test the hypothesis and I analyze it. I find the delta. Where's the gap between what I thought and what I just discovered through movement?
Yes.
And I analyze. My favorite metaphor for life is you pick up a rock, you chuck it as far as you can in the direction that you want to go. You walk there, you look at where you are, you look around, you pick it up and you chuck it in another direction. You keep doing that. Eventually your path's going to straighten, right?
Nice. Very nice. What you mentioned there, constant contemplation. I love that. Constant contemplation. However, you have to test your hypotheses. You can't just ask and answer questions. You have to put them to the test in real life. This is the difference between theory and practice. I know some people who are really good at practice. Kevin is great at practice. He implements so fast, but he'd never studied the theory. So he can fish, but doesn't know why to fish. Doesn't know how to get better at fishing. He calls himself a battering ram. If you point him in the right direction, he'll just keep going. And luckily we have me as a strategist. But he was better at implementing than I was. He was better at practice than I was. I was better at theory than him. So combined, we had both theory and practice. And I think everyone needs that righty and lefty, theory and practice. Some people are all theory, no practice. Some people are all practice, no theory, so they can't scale it. You need both, and you need them both in like a pretty good harmony. I wouldn't say balance, but you need them in a pretty good harmony. But that's a good metaphor too, is some people actually do start with the end in mind. Not everybody can do that. They hooked people up to fMRIs. You're probably aware of this if you're studying neuroscience. Some people could only envision a stranger 10 years out. I don't know why. I think because my past was so painful, I think I would go into the future as a defense mechanism. So as a trauma response. If the past is painful and the present is painful, I think the only thing I had was my future. So I went and I created this big, bright future in my head and then would work toward it as I think what started out as to avoid pain. Because if my childhood was good, I probably would have just enjoyed it more. But for me, it was like, how do I get out of this? How do I get out of this? How do I get out of this? I got to figure out how to make this better. This can't be it. This can't be it. This can't be it, right? I remember I was in my early 20s. I know we got to go in 5 minutes. And my mom argued with me. She said, why isn't it enough to just be nice? Why are you always worried about intelligence? Like, why does intelligence matter so much to you? And I remember thinking in my early 20s, I remember being like, that's a really dumb question. Like, what's the difference between a smartphone and a dumb phone, right? The smartphone's more capable. So what's the difference between us and an ant? Like, we can think. So first of all, intelligence is the most important thing, in my opinion, of how your life turns out. And I'm pretty sure that's accurate. I don't think there's anyone that could argue that, to be honest with you. Obviously, there's exceptions, but if you had to think of one main thing, it would probably be self-belief, humility, intelligence. Those would be all in there. And those often don't come hand in hand because when you're really smart, you rarely have humility, right? I've been arrogant too many times, and I always try to stay humble in advance now because life's coming for you if you're not. But what I am trying to say here is thinking about your thinking, metacognition, is a skill. The functional, chemical, and structural changes of the brain, neuroplasticity, I know you know this or you're studying this, you can make your executive function better. But only if you use it. If you don't use it, you lose it. And if you don't have goals, why would you use it? Kevin asked me one time, he's like, dude, how do you know all this? I was like, brother, I had to know all this to achieve my goals. He's like, well, chicken or egg? What comes first, deeper understanding or goals? Honestly, if you don't have goals, you don't have a reason to learn. And if you don't learn, you don't have goals because you don't believe anything's possible. So we're all stuck in this conundrum of, well, I want to be like Joe Rogan or I want to be like Tony Robbins, but I don't even know where to start, so I can't set the goal. That's why I said you got to start where you are. If you have level 1 belief, throw the rock at level 1 goal and then go get it. And then throw it at level 2 and then go get it. And then level 3. And then it's a mountain that gets higher as you climb it. And so I love this, man. We only have 3 minutes, but I love everything you're saying. I love what you're doing in the world, and I'm grateful to be a part of it.
Thank you, man. I want to end with one question. And it's a long answer, so you'll have to be a little quick, but you have always pushed yourself so far, right? And you've always thought into the future. How do you stay present now? Or is that something that you still need to work a lot on?
Yeah. I think that we all have the past, present, and future. And I think that the more I've studied and analyzed human beings, the more I believe in the following statement. If the past is greater than the future equals nihilism. Everything's an
Mm.
equation for me. I have a math modality of thinking, so forgive me, I'm an engineer. But if the past is greater than the future in your mind, it equals nihilism. Nihilism is hopelessness and helplessness. It basically means like, why invest in tomorrow? It's all going to go to shit anyway. That's a very terrible idea because even if it's true, this is the doom loop. The doom loop is, I don't believe in the future, therefore I don't invest in it, therefore it gets worse. And that makes me believe in it even less. So that's the doom loop. My job is to keep people out of the doom loop. When your future is brighter than your past, you have hope. A lot of people in my country in particular are struggling because they don't have a lot of hope. The future doesn't look as bright as the past for a lot of people, and it's scary. But that's a self-fulfilling prophecy if we're not careful. So to me, I try really hard to get people to live a life where they're excited for their own future. So I do learn from the past, build in the present toward a bigger, better, brighter future. I actually think statistically speaking, the most future-oriented people are actually the most fulfilled because I think fulfillment comes as a byproduct of growth, contribution, and quality of life. And usually quality of life is a byproduct of growth and contribution. That said, I know there's some future-oriented people who have nothing but anxiety and stress because they're only ever building and never present. I would say that I'm not in that category, but I do think that if I'm not careful, I will be.
Yeah. Alan, thank you so much. I've learned a lot through this conversation. I feel like that was really cool for the listeners to see as well, how we could build off of each other, always understanding, always growing.
Jack, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I will come back anytime. Just say the word.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Grateful Podcast with Jack Wagoner. I'm just so happy that you made it this far, got value out of this. And do me a favor, take a screenshot of where you're at right now and tag me on Instagram in your story, and I'll repost it. And thank you personally because it really is amazing that you took this time out of your day to cultivate more joy into your life and learn more and improve yourself. And if you think that anyone else in your life could get benefit from this, make sure to send it over to them so that we can keep making more impact on more people's lives. Now, if you enjoyed this, I release episodes every Monday, solo episodes, and then every Wednesday with an amazing guest. And my goal is to keep getting these guests to be even more amazing. Not that the ones we've had aren't, but just even more amazing and make a bigger impact on you guys. So if you want to help me do that, then leaving a review wherever you listened is huge. Hope you guys have a great week. I'll see you on Monday and Wednesday for the next episodes of the Grateful Podcast. Stay grateful.